Hello everybody, thank you again for joining me for a behind the poem video. Today I'm going to be talking about Boots in the Lamplight. It's one of the poems about halfway through the book and a more recent edition. It's about 6 or 7 years old. I wrote it very shortly after moving to London. I was in my second teaching job and celebrating a Christmas party with my colleagues. The only problem is that I grew up in a suburban neighborhood and I had only lived in London for less than a year, so I didn't quite trust city transport yet. And because where I worked and where the party was and where I lived were far apart, I ended up having to leave the party a little earlier than maybe I would have if we were closer. I ended up having to leave the party maybe around 10 o'clock at night. Not really what you want in your, first Christmas do, but I wanted to make sure that I got home on time. So as I was wandering back to the underground station, I'm enjoying the night life. It wasn't quite late enough that any of the people out were difficult or disruptive or in any way intimidating for someone who grew up in a suburb. But the traffic was zooming past and the street lamps were making the sidewalk really clear and really safe. And I noticed in one of those street lamps, there was a pair of boots on the ground. There was no other person anywhere near them. I couldn't tell who they belonged to or why they were left behind, but it struck my attention and it struck my imagination. And because I was in a little bit of a hurry, I snapped a picture so that I could write a poem later. And all the way back, in the hour it took me to get back to my house, it started like turning over in my imagination and reminding me that there was a theory by some of the partygoers at my university that it wasn't a good weekend unless you could construct an outfit from all of the discarded articles of clothing around campus. Given that my university had 40,000 students and took 15 minutes to walk from one end of the campus to the other, that would be a little bit less difficult, you might imagine. And I didn't happen to agree with this theory. I think that there are many ways to tell whether or not a weekend has been good, most of which don't have to do with losing the articles that you went out with, that you don't come back with everything you went out with. Not a good idea. And I didn't think that this idea was any better. Who walks barefoot at 10 o'clock at night back from somewhere in London? This is not something I thought was normal. This is not something I thought was a good idea. And I never, ever thought that, someone would wander off without their boots and leave them in the lamplight. Now, my wandering imagination started to think about what possible reason anyone could have for abandoning their boots. And I started to think about fairy tale options and dwarves and princesses and giants and witches and then came back to the theory that somebody just really, really forgot where they left their shoes. So 2 points. Don't forget where you leave your shoes. Make sure that you come back with everything you went out with. And if you decide to leave your boots behind, maybe a little note as to why would be nice. I am uploading the photo underneath this video and to the webpage for the book. I am also going to be releasing the pre-order link for the book because we're getting really close to the release date of the poem book. So I really appreciate everybody's support. Please feel free to share the page for the book, the videos, if you've enjoyed them, about the stories behind some of the poems, and the launch date. Invite anybody you think would enjoy a little evening of poetry. And again, thank you for your support. It's appreciated.